very proud of you that you stick around until the end. I know it's late. I know the energy might be low. I try to raise the energy a little bit. I will ask you some questions so you don't just sit around. Before I start actually getting into the talk, this is QR code. You have seen it a million times already today, probably, but repetition is key. As the more times you hear something, the better it sticks. So please, if you have any questions at home, if you have questions in the room, you can also ask them at the end. Feedback also very much appreciated always. So please leave everything you want to say there. And without further ado, I will get started on the actual topic. And I have two amazing ladies before me who already talked about AI, who talked about accessibility. And indeed, I'm going to combine the two a little bit. And I want to start about the motivation why I made this talk, actually, because of course AI is a buzzword and everybody's talking about it, but it was actually this blog post that got me thinking about it. And this is a blog post from Jacob Nielsen. Has anybody in the room ever heard of the name Jacob Nielsen? I see 1 hand, 2 hands, 3 hands. So some people. He's known as the king of usability. So he's a really big name when it comes to front-end design and development, etc. And he wrote a blog post about accessibility and AI. And if I must take a very dividing quote, it's this one. So he stated that the accessibility movement has been a miserable failure and we should just switch to generative UIs and let AI fix the issue. This was quite divisive in the accessibility community, to say the least. So just a quick show of hands in the room. Who thinks and who agrees with this? We failed, just let AI fix it. Is that maybe the solution? Who thinks, yes, that is the solution? Nobody. Okay, great. I don't have to do the talk. Not necessary at all. I believe you, but, and I'm on the same page, accessibility is way more than AI can solve, but AI can be a tool, especially with the new law coming up. And I won't go into the law because Emma just put it very nicely already. A lot of, and I'm not saying people here in the room, so don't be offended, but a lot of front-end engineers, but also back-end engineers have never touched accessibility before. And AI can be a starting position for you if you haven't touched it and you have nobody in your team that can teach you some of it. It could be a good place to start. We'll dive into that at the end. I will have a live demo. That's always nerve-wracking, so please pray for me that everything goes well and that the network here is stable enough for it. But first, let's talk about impact, because accessibility is about people. That's why I'm so passionate about it. It's about people. It's not about the technique. It's not about the newest JavaScript framework. It's really about understanding who your users are and understanding that you are not your user. I'm very passionate about that. You don't see it, but I have a sticker on my laptop that says you are not the user. So I truly believe in that. You're only one person, and your team, even if it's 10 people, you're only 10 people, and your users are very much more diverse than that. And hopefully on your project, you have the amazing ability to have user testing, to get different kind of people on board, walk you through how they use the app, because how you designed it and how your user is using it is usually not the same. So it's always very nice to see that, but not every one of us gets that amazing situation. So even the relevation of we are not the user and we really need to think about who our users are is already amazing. This is a slide that Microsoft themselves use very often. And it talks about, oh, sorry, this one. This slide from Microsoft. It talks about different kind of disabilities, and they usually divide it into permanent disabilities. You have it, you won't get rid of it anymore. Temporary disabilities. You have it for a certain period of time, but it will go away eventually. And situational, so very short-lived disabilities, basically. And disabilities is a harsh word for temporary and situational, but still, it is something that we need to keep in mind when we develop for users. I use slightly different categories, so I still want to show you this, because this is what you see most often, these three categories, but there's one category that I greatly miss. So I basically combine temporary and situational into one, and I add one of my own. So let me show you how I think about these groups and how I group them basically. And this is for me the key of accessibility, right? Understanding the wide array of disabilities, and I can't go over them in a little over half an hour, so I will leave a lot of them out, but just some categories that you might think about. And the permanent ones are the easiest. When people think about, okay, I have to do accessibility, this is what comes to mind, right? So you think about physical disability. Somebody's in a wheelchair, somebody has only one arm or has lost a finger. It's very visual. It's easy to understand that this is a category of people that we might want to do something about. And this is, for example, a category where the keyboard accessibility comes into play very big time. Then we have audio disability, so people who are deaf, hard of hearing. I myself have a colleague who can only hear from on one side of his head, so only the right side, the left side he doesn't hear. So something as normal to us as stereo sounds in music is very hard for him, because he will miss half of it. So it's always not fun, but it's always very beneficial to think about which people in your immediate circle do you have which might suffer, which is also a very harsh term, but suffer from any kind of disability, and keep them in your mind, because they can very much motivate you to put that extra step in. And like Emma said, one step at a time. If you do one thing, I would be so happy already. Audio disabilities, visual disabilities, sorry. Blind people, colorblind people. So 12% of males is colorblind. So that's a very big group. I see one person raising their hand. So let's think about you when we develop. My father is also colorblind, so it hits close to home. We have the neurodiverse people, and in IT, about 50% of us is some type of neurodiverse. So think about autism, ADHD. I myself am dyslexic, for example. So we have a good representation in IT for the neurodiversity community. So that's great. So this should be a very good represented and thought of category of people. And then, of course, we have people who are born with any kind of defect in their DNA. So think about the Down syndrome, for example. It's a very big one. So permanent disabilities doesn't go away. And I once heard a quote from somebody, and it's very, very powerful, I think, because disabled people are a minority, right? And a disability is the only minority any one of us can become at any moment. So when you're a person of color, you are born that way, but you can't become a person of color. But disabilities is certainly one of the minorities that any one of us can just stumble upon by accident. So that's a very powerful quote, I think. Moving on to the next category, which is temporary disabilities. And the next one is going to hit close to home. And that is when you're a parent. So I became a mother 20 months ago. And I know for a fact, when you have a little baby on your arm and you have to order the diapers via some kind of web shop, and it's not accessible and you can't reach it because the mobile phones nowadays are way too freaking big for your entire hand to actually swipe across if you don't have to. And I may or may not have thrown my cell phone across the room a couple of times out of frustration. So this is not something people usually think about as a accessibility group, right? New parents that might lose the use of one arm for extended periods of time because you have a newborn. but it's definitely the case. Also think about people who are recovering from an illness. Maybe you had a laser eye surgery because you're sick of your glasses. Now, temporarily, you will be quite blind, or at least photosensitive. We have, in Dutch you call it laaggeletterdheid, but people who are not able to read as well as others. It's something that sometimes you can get rid of with some training. But in the same category, also expats. So, for example, if I were to come and live in Italy, beautiful country, and I go to the government websites, which possibly everything is in Italian, I didn't check, I will have a very hard time if it's not in English, for example. The same as with the Dutch government websites where I'm from. Big accessibility case right here as well. But you can also think of small things. You're sitting at a Starbucks and you have to follow the mandatory company training for the security, and you have to do it today, and there's a video that they quiz you on, but the video doesn't have any subtitles, and your headset is empty because you forgot to charge it at home, and you can't actually, you know, get it done, and you have your manager in your Slack or Teams inbox again. Why didn't you finish this training in time? Simple subtitles could have helped you with that. So, and then we go to the final category, which I like to think of when I try to create personas in my head for which I develop. And that's age and age restrictions. So I looked up the age distribution of Italy. It looks a little bit like this. And when I draw a line right around here, we will see everything above the line is 45 years and older. Do I dare to ask if there are people in the audience who are 45 years and older? I see a few hands. This is, in Italy at the very least, 55% of the population, so over half. And at 45 years of age, this is around the time that your eyesight starts to decrease a little bit. So when you are making a website, please make sure that if you zoom in, everything still fits into the screen, because at some age you might go your screen size from 100 to 125, 150, whatever fits your needs. And this is not a disability. This is just us getting older. It will happen to all of us faster than we might want to think. And then I can draw another line, and that other line is right around here, 65 years and older. I'm not sure if anybody from that age is here, usually not at the conference I talk at, but that's around 24% of the Italian population. And this is the age where, other than your sight, also your hearing will deteriorate. Some of us a little bit early if we go to too many concerts without the head the ear protection in, but still, this is around the age that starts to decline. But also, unfortunately, the cognitive ability also starts to decline. So if I take an example from my own situation, my father just recently got into his pension age, and he's not 65 yet, but he had to go to some sort of government website and say, okay, I'm no longer working, I'm going to enjoy my pension, please make sure that I get the money. Somehow he got on a portal where he had to enter a number, and he didn't understand, and he called me because the people on the phone didn't understand where he was going. And I came to his house and I saw that he somehow got into the portal for the employees of said government facility. This is why I always say you are not the user. I'm pretty sure they didn't test it with people like my dad, who is not particularly tech savvy, because he didn't grow up with it like we did. And somehow he got into a portal and he needed a number, and they didn't understand on the phone that he needed the number and where he was actually going, because she didn't need a number for it. And I had to help him out because the government website wasn't particularly well suited for their demographic. And it's hard, right? Because we are developers, we're working on it, and we are typically a little bit higher educated, we are typically a little bit younger, we are typically tech savvy, so it's very, very hard to position yourself in the position of somebody who hasn't grown up with tech, who thinks that Google is the most amazing thing on the planet. I still think that Google is the most amazing thing on the planet, but they don't get very much use out of a computer other than playing a card game, in my opinion. So this is, and these are the people you're doing it for. But you're also doing it for yourself, because you will get older, because you might end up in an operation that takes your sight away for a little bit, because you might become a parent and have a little baby on your arm, because you might, there's different cases and 100 million different scenarios I can paint here. It's not just for disabled people, it's for all of us. And I mean, good contrast never hurt anybody, right? It helps a lot of people and doesn't hurt a lot of people, so why wouldn't we do it? When we move on from the accessibility part of the talk and we go into the AI talk, I always like to start with some theory. And I have been doing this talk for quite some time, and I have been using AI in the way that I'm going to present you. But when I just started doing AI, this was what I thought of AI. So we have a big black box of magic. I put something in the big black box of magic, and I get something out the big black box of magic. And I don't care what happens in that big black box, because there's a lot of people with PhDs and amazing degrees who create that magical algorithm which gives me cats on balls with hats on, you know, which gives me the code that I need. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, of course. The big black box of magic can be anything from a decision tree, which will just spit out yes or no. It can be an algorithm, it can be an LLM, different stuff going in there, but I don't feel like I'm smart enough to actually explain it, so I use the big black box of magic. And input can be different things, you know. I can talk to my computer, I can type to it, I can put in a prompt, I can put in an image, whatever. And there's also 100 million things that can come out of it. Text can come out of it. Images, videos, code, in our case, which we are going to play with today. But this is a fairly new advancement, I would say, in IT. And it's been ramping up, and the whole evolution of it is going 100 miles an hour. And it also gave birth to something that I'm following. It's kind of a trend right now in the internet. It's called vibe coding. Anybody ever heard of the term vibe coding? Show me some hands. Who has heard of this? I see a couple of hands, but also not the entire room, so I will explain it shortly. So vibe coding is basically people who have never done programming before discovering the amazing world of AI. And AI IDEs, just like Cursor, is a very big one. And they start talking with the AI, and magical code comes out of it. And all of a sudden, they can create programs and UIs and amazing things. But they also run into the problem that they actually don't know what coding is and which of the options they should choose. So which options are the best, which options are the most accessible, which options are the most performant. You know, pick your non-functional. They have never heard of non-functionals probably. I came across a post on Reddit recently, and it made me laugh very loud. It was a vibe coder using Cursor AI. So the amazing new AI-powered IDE. And he said, help me please. AI destroyed 4 months of work. How can I get this back? Because this guy never heard of version control before. Nothing was in Git. And he just thought, I lost everything. This is what vibe coding can do. So it opens up the world of coding to a large population, but they still need the tools and the guidelines to make it actually usable and dependable and accessible and performant and all the other things that we want them to do. So we need to help them a little bit. And I think especially for the more senior developers in the room, you will get juniors in your team who get on the vibe coding train, you know? Learning how JavaScript or any other programming language works exactly is less important nowadays. You immediately go to the next step, which is I need to create something, I need to create functionality, and I don't care how I must build it in the language, I can just do it. But that also means that stuff like the non-functional requirements comes into play in a career way earlier than it used to, because we took a large chunk of the learning curve away because AI can do it for us. Which also sets a challenge for the seniors who need to teach the more junior members of our coding community how to do it. So even if what I'm going to show you with AI right now seems like, yeah, I know this. I know what accessibility is. I know how AI is. I don't need it. Realize that the more junior people in your team are using AI this way. And they might not come to you with questions. And you see a pull request and you think, what kind of garbage is this? This is how it became to be. So we also need to change the way we think about mentoring. So I hope, whether you are junior or more senior, that you take away something from this. So I have, I think, about 10 minutes left before we do a little Q&A. So we are going to play with some AI. And when I started this talk, the first thing I did was go to ChatGPT and ask this question. Can you create a Hello World HTML page? This is what I got. I hope you can read it at the back too. Exactly what I asked for, right? But when I changed the question just a tiny little bit by asking, can you create a accessible Hello World application? This is what I get. So this was the starting point for me to realize that AI is not solving the problems unless I ask specifically to solve the problem. And that's a very powerful thing to remember, I would say. So let's see if we can get a little demo actually working out. So ChatGPT, I just showed you. It's said in Dutch, by the way, if you can't understand. It says, what can I help you with today? And I can ask the same question that I just showed you. And the fun thing about ChatGPT right now, which it didn't do last time I did a demo. Yes? Oh, you don't? Yes. Okay. No. Do I see two screens somewhere? Oh, let's see. Sorry, guys, I'm just going to solve the technical issue. And then we get going. Thank you for reminding me. Let's see. We go to the display because I didn't duplicate it. So hang in with me. So duplicate. Is this better? I think so, right? Okay. Sorry about that. That's the demo course, I think. Can you create a Hello World application? Because last time I was playing around with ChatGPT, it got me these code examples, and I think, yes, I can actually see what it's doing by immediately showing an example. So last time I was playing around with ChatGPT, I had to still copy paste code into the browser. You don't have to do that anymore, which is fun. But I think for this crowd, it's way more interesting to dive into the Copilot stuff. And let me just check if you can see it. Is this zoomed in enough? First question. I see. Yes. Okay, great. So what I did for a previous conference was create a very clean, simple, just HTML a little bit of JavaScript and a CSS web page to do a little workshop with. So I'm using that again today because that's the easiest. And it's important to say that everything you see here, all this code, the JS, the JavaScript, the JS, the CSS, and the HTML are all AI generated, because I was driving home a point that out of the box, AI is not very accessible. So just like Emma said, accessibility all starts with HTML. The more we can do in HTML with good structuring, in CSS for some styling, and the less we can do in JavaScript, the more accessible it becomes out of the box, and you don't have to think about too much. As soon as you bring JavaScript into play, unfortunately, we have to test a lot and think what did we possibly break and how to support it. So I know it's a JS conference. Sorry to burst your bubble. I'm always in the team. Let's use the web browser capabilities as much as possible and only use JavaScript when we absolutely need to. So if you don't agree with me, come fight me after this one at the drinks, and we'll have a lovely conversation, I'm sure. So I'm going to use this AI generated code to use some AI on to improve it. And like I said, it's all about the conversation you're having with AI. And I really like the conversational part of GitHub Copilot. So I can go into the document and, let it have suggestions and let it add code blocks there, but then I don't understand why it's doing it. And the power of Copilot chat is that I can have conversations and that I can make it do accessible things without actually understanding what kind of accessibility stuff I need to do. So for example, I can ask, can you make this HTML page usable for my grandmother of 80 years old? And it starts coming up with suggestions. And it also takes you with you on the way it thinks. And it gives you the references, because that's very important as well. Always think about references when you use AI. So it's saying, okay, to make this HTML page more accessible and user-friendly for an elderly user, such as your grandmother, we can implement several improvements. Now, and it shows some code here. If I scroll down, it also says key accessibility improvements, font size and readability, of course, because zooming and stuff, high contrast, because the eyesight might go down, keyboard navigation in case maybe an elderly person has a sickness where they have the shakes and they can't control, and then using a mouse can be very annoying. Even eating with a spoon becomes a challenge. Alt text for images, always a good thing. Area labels, simplified navigation, like my dad encountered KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it as simple as possible, especially for the somewhat elderly user groups. Contact forms, keep it clear, clear labels, required fields, etc. And when it has a code suggestion like this, and I scroll a little bit to the front, you have different options in GitHub Copilot. I can apply it to home.html. That's the one I have open. I can say insert it at where my cursor is. I can just copy it, and I can also say insert it into a terminal or insert it into a new file in case that I, for example, don't have an HTML file yet. So those are wonderful things it can do. And some smart things GitHub Copilot does is, for example, I have this file open right now and selected, and you can see here that it's watching. That's why this one is here. It's watching the current home.html in the context. It's very important. So if you have a application that's hundreds and hundreds of files, it will get very slow if it has to take in all that context. You can do it with, I think it's at workspace. So if I say at workspace, it takes the entire project into account. But if you don't do that, please note that Copilot does not know exactly what everything is. So there's a thing called context in AI. It's very important. The smaller the context, the more realistic the suggestions will be. And this is also how vibe coders work, right? They will ask a non-technical question like, can you make it accessible from a grandmother? And something comes out and they just plug it in. And a challenge for us as the more experienced, I'm saying us because I assume you're more experienced, but for the more experienced members of the team is to really make sure that they use chat, that they understand what comes out of it, that they understand the way of working so they can actually do it themselves the second time they encounter it and not just copy paste. And also challenge this. Ask your team, do you understand what this code is doing? And please explain it to me. Because then we really get into the mindset of understanding what we're doing. I hope this was a helpful little demo. It's short but sweet, but I want to keep some time for any questions. So I will switch quickly to the PowerPoint again to see if I skipped over anything. Let's see, we had this, the demo. This is me. I'm Ramona. I did not introduce myself because I don't think I'm the most important when I talk about accessibility. I'm a software engineer at Team Rockstars IT. I'm a Microsoft MVP on web technologies. Recently this week, so this is very new for me, very excited. I talk about inclusivity and accessibility, and I love agile way of working. I want to send you home with the power of words. It's all in your question. What you don't ask from AI, you don't get out of it. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, let me know.